This is TWiT.
I saw a stat. Since 2015, they've only sold something like 27 million Pixel phones, which sounds like a lot, but it's less than Apple sells or Samsung sells in a quarter. It
feels like the battle lines are already really drawn now in the mobile phone market. I remember like a decade ago, covering like iPhone and Android launches. It was like blow for blow,
right.
A battle to the death between Apple and Google. And now it's kind of like, okay, we have a status quo. Apple is number one, and then different Android players combined are number two. And then can anyone even name a number three? Everyone has tried.
Samsung.
No one has done it. Well, Samsung I consider part of the Android center, And,
but if you look at manufacturers and you look globally, if you look in the U.S., it's a little different. But if you look globally, Samsung's number one.
Right.
And then Apple with the iPhone, probably some Chinese manufacturers next. Google's way down the chart. But Google, to me, what they kind of were establishing by making a watch, announcing kind of the more speaker stuff. They talked a lot about the Google Assistant, some voice recognition on your phone and so forth, is the ecosystem play. And that's what I took away from this, is that there are now three ecosystems. There's Samsung, there's Google, and there's Apple. And Google wants to play in that game.
I've got to say, I'd add Amazon into that because,
But they don't have a phone, they don't have a watch.
They don't have a phone, they don't have a watch, but they do have the data. And I think looking
Which would
at
you rather have?
But looking at Amazon's recent plays, they're not going for the hardware side of it necessarily, other than the home assistants.
And the robot, the iRobot vacuum cleaner, which I think now they're saying is, I suspect, maybe a little bit in jeopardy because of regulatory issues.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you're right. Amazon has the data, but I mean. This is
but
me.
When it comes to day-to-day handsets, yes, you're right. But
then this is why I think Google has a hard time, because I think normal people, I don't know any, but if I knew some normal people, will, they say, okay, I could get a Samsung, I could get an Apple, or I could get a Google. Almost, I would guess universally say, yeah, but the Google, they're going to spy on you. And I think Apple's really trying to create that environment where they go, hey, you want privacy, you want security, don't go with those guys.
Yeah, but Apple are being utter hypocrites about that.
It's not necessarily true.
Yeah, we're all about privacy. Should have a little asterisk there saying offer does not apply in China.
Right.
Or
anywhere else. They're doing ads now. Apple has plenty of first-party data. There's no lack of it.
They have done incredible branding around it's marketing, the privacy and and like opting out, and those are good things. But there is definitely still they want to do more ads. They're taking away market share specifically from Meta. Meta is the one who's really getting punched in the face because of it.
Yeah, Meta does not have an ecosystem play for sure.
Well, Oculus is been their go for it, but we're not yet at the point, and we may never be at the point where VR headsets or even AR headsets are anywhere close to mainstream to the phone. Mark made that bet years ago that he could build a whole new hardware ecosystem, and it hasn't panned out yet. But what other choice did he have? He saw what was going to happen with Apple years ahead, but there was almost nothing he could do.
He didn't do a Facebook phone. Amazon tried and failed.
He tried to do a Facebook phone. I was there. It was like an HTC phone. I was there for the launch event, and it flopped. And it's the same thing. Amazon tried a phone, and it flopped. There's just a whole pile of flopped phones. I'm sure we could find, there's got to be museums, just flop phones that failed.
Throw the Microsoft kin in that pile, and you'll...
yeah.
So... does it make what am I saying is it makes sense that there are right now three big ecosystems. Yes, there's a huge market for cheap Android handsets, but among the premium buyers and the premium phones, there's three ecosystems: Samsung, Google, and Apple. When do you think Google has a perception problem?
I think they have. I think they're trying to figure out how to find a niche. So with Apple and with Samsung, right, they kind of have the big three devices that we tend to think of. So Apple with its amazing kind of integrated ecosystem, you have a watch, you have a phone, and you have a tablet, right? All kind of super well integrated. And I think Samsung is kind of competing and is in more position to compete with Apple because of their market share, right? With a watch, a tablet, and a successful phone. And I think I can't help it. Google must know that there's no way that they're going to ever catch up to Samsung. It does not make sense with Samsung kind of already being ingrained as like the reason that Android is the number one like mobile operating system in the world. And just their market share and just the fact that, you know, they got in there early with like kind of going through carriers. I just don't think there's any chance for Google to conceivably compete with them and to get to the level where Samsung and Apple is. But I think kind of going to what Iain said, I think maybe they need to shift their ecosystem a bit and kind of with the home and the Pixel tablet, and especially with the Pixel tablet, not necessarily being an iPad or an S8 tab kind of level where you know, there's a lot of appeal to media productivity, you know, kind of high-end creators where it's more of a home device. And that's where kind of maybe the Venn diagram of ecosystems kind of starts to circle with Amazon is like maybe they're trying to make their ecosystem something a little bit unique. Cause I just feel like they kind of were in this space and it's like, yeah, the numbers aren't working out. So what can we leverage? What are our strengths that we can kind of make our ecosystem a thing and actually have it be successful? I don't know if it's a perception problem. I think it's like they're in a weird spot. Like, because Lord knows Google has been begging developers, third-party developers to make amazing flagship like showcase large screen apps, and we're not doing it. Like that's like a whole other rant aside about
that was another pitch
screens.
When they're talking about the tablet is, and we've been working for years to get developers to do tablets, and that's why Android tablets have never succeeded. They just don't have the apps.
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg problem. And like, you know, back when I think around Honeycomb time when tablets first came around, people were really excited.
Honeycomb was a tablet.
I had some of them.
Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding? I've got
Nexus
so many
7
dead Android tablets around the house at the moment. It's ridiculous.
You know,
I've got two Google Glasses.
What was the 7-inch tablet that Google did? That was
the Nexus 7.
That was a great
love that. It was amazing.
Tablet. And actually, in hindsight, it wasn't much bigger than the modern smartphones, but it was good. It was just right. I liked it a lot.
It's a good Kindle-sized tablet. Yeah.
Yeah. Where'd they go wrong?
100.
This is, by the way, the epitaph that's going to be on Google's tombstone. Where did they go wrong? Because not that Google's close to death's door, Facebook maybe, but not Google. But and that's only because they make so much money in search that they can, you know, fritter it away.
This money out.
Yeah.
There's a branding thing because, like, in the end, the like quality between the phones, I don't think is all that different, right? Like, you can get pretty much everything done.
In fact, you could argue the Pixel 6 and 7 have the best cameras of any smartphone.
It's a branding thing.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I think real people look at Google and say, no, they're an ad company. I don't trust them.
Yeah, but Google really missed a trick on this one, because you remember when the first Nexus phones came out, they were the stripped down Android operating system, no bloatware, nothing else.
Yeah, but geeks loved them. I don't know if real people loved them.
Yeah, but I mean, if you get a Samsung phone, it's got so much crapware on there.
Oh, it's horrible.
You cannot remove,
and people love it.
They could have made that a unique selling point for the Nexus and then the Pixel. But then they decided, right, let's jack up the Pixel price and put a skin on Android. And they haven't really decided what they wanted to do with it. It was just like, be like Apple, just be like Apple and get people to pay a lot of money.
Well, to some degree,
and that's not going to work.
Samsung's the anti-Apple. I think a lot of Samsung owners are actually buying it because it thumbs its nose at Apple. Certainly that's their ad campaigns, right? Even today, they still do ad campaigns mocking, you know, that I've been seeing this ad where the woman's on the bus in love with her iPhone, and then she sees the flip phone and then everything, and she has to have it.
And then she sees it in a year and sees the screen.
But seriously, that's how Samsung, I think, sees itself, and I think probably that's market research says, at least in the U.S., the people who buy Samsung are buying it because they don't want an Apple phone. They want something of perceived similar quality and value. And you and I noticed that there's two different messaging apps with the same name, that there's two different everything apps, browsers, everything. But we noticed it, but I don't think I think normal people love their Samsungs. Every time I meet somebody who has a Samsung, they love their Samsungs.
I have to admit, I've actually been using a Z Fold 4.
See?
See? Hold on. Okay. So I've actually had a very long, and I think a lot of Android data developers have a long not even love, hate relationship with Samsung. And a lot of that has to do with Samsung and their custom flavor of Android and it not kind of conforming to stock Android. So I think, my view is incredibly skewed by being an Android dev because deving for, quote, just stock Android is the easiest and most straightforward thing. Samsung ruins our day half the time with kind of these weird bugs. And then, so around June or July, I dropped my Pixel 6 Pro on my sister's ceramic floor and it cracked. So I had a Pixel. Yeah, it was that sound, when it drops and you just hear it and you're just
fatal, just like, this is going to be expensive.
And then you look and okay. So I actually had a Z Fold 3 that I got from like a Google thing. And I was like, well, crap, I don't have any other option. I started using it and specifically with a foldable. And I kind of had to deal with it because to get something about the Google Care or something with Pixel 6. But I kind of get it now. I do. And a friend of mine who works at Tonal, Gabriel Peel, once told me, like, look, if you kind of get past the bloatware, if you start really put the effort into setting up a Samsung, you'll love it. And I think Michelle Rahman, who, is also a co-host on All About Android, has said that, Samsung is great for power users. So once you get to that initial setup period, there's a lot that a power user can do with Samsung, and I totally get it. I kind of feel like I'm betraying my Android native brethren a little bit, but I can see why people end up liking these phones. And certainly in terms of the hardware, especially this foldable device, I get it. So yes.
So you're saying if somebody knows about Samsung Good Lock, they're going to be a Samsung user forever, right?
I don't know. Like I kind of
I know I'm with you. I think if you're sophisticated enough to have learned how to, Good Lock is a perfect example of an app that Samsung doesn't even mention it, but it's in their store. And you know about it. Aficionados go, oh, yeah, once you get that. And Bixby ain't so bad. Look, I'm able to use it, and it does great things. Once you get to that point, you've invested.
Did you just say Bixby ain't so bad?
I heard that too.
These are that's what people are saying. Oh, but you don't understand. Bixby is how I interact with the phone, and it works really well. And I do think that this is that Samsung aficionado speaking.
People buy into it, and then
it's the IKEA factor, right? People look. IKEA furniture is a miserable experience, but if you build it, you will love it because you put so much of your heart into it that it
ends up lasting once you do it. Same thing. Once you've set the thing up with Samsung in particular,
you've got the investment,
right? It is. You're right. It is for power users, and power users do love the thing.
That's why they love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it has a place that Google has not been able to find that niche, which I feel like is the conclusion that we've all come to. And I hope they figure out a specific niche. It's not like that they don't have their fans, though, and that people are not buying it. But I just can't see a big move in market share.
It's a small group. That's the problem they have. It's 27 million phones in 8 years is not moving the needle.
Honestly, I've been a Pixel user for a while simply because I want the security updates first. That's the most important thing for me. But
that's me too. And in fact, I gave my Samsung away. I had a Flip, which I really liked. At least I liked the form factor. I gave it to Stacy Higginbotham. I gave my daughter my S22 Ultra. But because I like the pure Android experience. But we live in a bubble. It's very clear we're in a bubble.
Yeah. This is it.
We think everybody loves the Pixel 6. Nobody even knows it exists. We do. Everybody I know has a Pixel 6.
It's got a great camera and photo software, but albeit I am Pixel 5 because I want the 3.5 mil jack. So,
it's it's pure Android. It's got all the updates. I guess again the question I'm asking is: Google's trying to make an ecosystem play? Do they have a chance in hell against Samsung and Apple? Ben is
honestly no.
Yeah, where would you? No.
No, I mean, look, this is I have this is the ultimate ecosystem.
He's holding up an iPhone 14
I know,
Pro
I had
Max,
to.
baby. Yeah.
They built an ecosystem where people want to go and build the things there first, and then Samsung built an ecosystem where everyone builds everything else. It's just you can only build for one or two things, and if you hit those two, you hit almost everybody, and you can just do most of the work for Samsung, and then a little bit of additional work and it goes over to Google, because they're both, I mean, honestly, this is Huyen's territory, but yeah, you think Apple first, Android second when it comes to releasing apps in general, at least in the US. Depends on the country, of course.
I am stuck. I have, of course, all this different phones, and I can live in all the ecosystems. But honestly, as much as I hate it and it makes me mad, the Apple ecosystem rules. I hate to admit, I hate it. But the way they've set it up with continuity, with the Mac, with the iPad, with the AirPods, with the phone, with the watch, you kind of want the complete set.
AirDrop and iMessage are magical things. They just are. And
the one person in my family, my daughter, who has an Android phone, and by the way, hates Apple, which is this, again, same thing. It's kind of the anti-Apple. Same thing with Mary Jo Foley on our Windows Weekly show. Hates Apple. Has a Pixel 6. They honestly, I think Apple just sucks you in, and you it's hard to get out. That's the point of an ecosystem play, right? Lock in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And once you make a choice, the ideal world would be everything be open and interoperate, and you could choose the best watch, you could choose the best earbuds, you could choose the best phone, the best laptop, and it would all work together. But it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. And what happens with Apple, and I think the phone is probably the gateway drug. You get the phone, then you kind of want the watch, then you kind of want the AirPods, and then you're stuck. You cannot go. You cannot leave. Am I right?
We're also at the point.
Yeah.
We're at the point where parents are like indoctrinating their kids into an ecosystem.
Yeah. There was a Hacker News story today about a guy who had bought an iPhone for his kid in the school. Said you may not bring. The kid was, I don't know, 5th grade, 6th grade. You may not. By the way, most 5th graders and 6th graders in affluent areas anyway have phones now because it's how you keep track of your kid, right? It's how you they can call for a ride, or you know where they are, and the school said no, you can't. I must have been some hippie school. No, you can't have an iPhone, and they gave each kid an AirTag. And said, here, your parents can keep track of you with this.
Yeah.
And I just had to shake my head, I guess.
There was an article in the New York Times recently about how parents are putting Apple Watches on their kids so that they can track and do simple phone calling, because you can get very cheap plans that way.
And incidentally, Apple has a mode where you set up your phone for your kid. He doesn't have to have a phone. She has an Apple Watch, and mom has the iPhone. Apple knows that. Wasn't there a memo? This is a discovery, and we're going to talk about discovery and the problems with court cases and discovery in a bit. But discovery can be a nightmare for these companies. And the Epic Apple event, court action, which Apple won hands down, but they lost in discovery because the email came out, I think it was from Craig Federighi or Eddie Q, saying, we can't put messages on Android because then parents would buy cheap Android phones for their kids. The Apple knows this 100%.
Oh, yeah, but
go ahead.
I mean, there are always going to be parents that do this because it gives them reassurance. I mean, back in my day, my mum gave me a watch and said, if you're not back by 5 p.m., I'm going out looking for you. It will be bad for you.
Yeah.
But,
that was the 80s version of an iPhone.
I was going to say, this is not the world we're living in right now. And I can kind of understand Apple's point, because obviously they want to shift hardware. But I mean, these kind of child tracking things are incredibly popular. They're also, as I've learned after looking into it, incredibly insecure. I mean, if you're buying a kid tracker with Android, you are trusting that a third-party manufacturer has not just copied a software stack and isn't updating it, and you could just be leaving this wide open. So, there are real problems with these kind of things in terms of you might think you're making your kids safer, but maybe you're not.
Right. I was in a very fancy Tiburon. You probably know it, Ian. Is
hippies with money.
A very, very wealthy enclave in Marin County. Lisa and I were there for lunch, and there was a candy store, and Lisa has to go to every candy store. Some people's shoe stores, jewelry stores, she's got to go to the candy store. So we go in. There's a gaggle of kids, all of them. I mean, and these are little kids, maybe 8 to 12, maybe a little older than 8, 10 to 12, 13. They're all paying with their iPhones. None of them have cash. And there's some sort of parental control because the kid said, well, I only have $3 I can spend. They all were paying with tap to pay. Now, it's an affluent community, but that's kind
common.
I think it's a trend. Yeah.
The wallet may barely be a thing in a decade or two. They're going to be like, why do I have to have a physical version of my driver's license or my ID? It makes no sense. And you know what? Probably a little bit down the line, maybe it doesn't make sense.
The Pixel Watch looks very pretty. When do you think it's... I mean, this is, again, I can't hardly believe it. Google's made Wear OS for years. They've let Motorola and Fossil and everybody else make, and Samsung now, make Android Wear watches. They're finally making one of their own. Is it because they bought Fitbit?
I think it is part of the ecosystem play. And I think, they have Fitbit.
You got to have every piece.
They want to do something. Yeah, you have to have every piece just to kind of be, it's like table stakes in the game. And I don't know, I feel like Wear OS has kind of been again, not dissimilar from tablets, but I think a little more successful than large screen story has been kind of a weird space for Android and Google as a company.
Well,
and so I think
you're an Android developer and you're wearing a hoop.
I just don't need a smartwatch. I just don't need a smartwatch. And it's actually, what may blow your mind is that actually quite a few of my Android friends have switched to the iOS ecosystem in recent years because of the wonderful walled garden. Yes, there are lots of Android developers.
They want to be blue bubble, green bubbles, right? They want.
They do. They don't want to be part of that Drake song or whatever.
They don't want to get bullied.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because I think that Google, in a sense, especially as an Android developer, a lot of times we take a lot of cues from Google first-party apps for better or for worse. And I think that, for something like Wear, we kind of, and for large screens, it's kind of hard to convince us to put time and effort into it. Like having a Wear app, having even a large screen version of an app takes additional design and development time. And so we often look to Google as this kind of North Star, hey, look, y'all, we're really, really serious this time. We promise you this time we're super serious about Wear OS and we're super serious about large screens. And so not saying that they're doing this for developers because I don't think so, but I think that they need to put, their toe in the water to make kind of Wear OS successful, to kind of showcase maybe what it's about and what they can do. And I don't know why that's important. I keep thinking about this a lot, especially with questions about, even the Pixel phone, we're talking about whether they're ever going to catch up and beat Samsung or Apple.
No,
and to me,
it's hopeless.
And it's weird because I think the Pixel phone itself, even itself, has kind of a muddled identity, right?
Yeah.
Because
what is Tensor? What is the Tensor 2? What does that mean? Is it a good chip? Is it a bad chip? We don't know. It lives in its own little vacuum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very tech enthusiast world. And so is it a reference phone? Is it a showing off what Google, machine learning and AI can do?
Well, I feel like they want more now.
Well, yeah, it's they want to compete with a flagship. It's flagship, they, rather than they do. And in the Made by Google event, they had a lot of amazing examples of cross device and computational photography and, machine learning and natural language and all that kind of stuff. But it's they have all that, but they somehow still want to keep one foot in that flagship box and create, a high-end phone that people want to talk about, that reviewers want to review, that people like us want to talk about. And it's kind of I don't know how these kind of competing goals are going to play out.
I'm going to call it here. It's hopeless. The reason they're sleepwalking through these events is because they know. Rick Osterloh knows. He was the guy who, when the Pixel 4 came out, days before the event, yelled at the team saying the battery life's terrible. It's they know it's hopeless.